Alright, so pretty simple stuff for the S13. I'm not going to bother trying to find you guys a good angle. We already tightened up that little water bypass seal that we made up a couple of months ago. We just put RTV on it last night. We're going to go ahead and make a few more grounds for the chassis. I also found this grounding harness. I'm not sure if this was for a Z or if it was for the 240, but it looks relatively new, so I think it's for the Z. But we're going to attach it to this wiring harness just to get a better ground throughout the car, because I don't really trust it at this point. So we're going to take the Dremel. This whole entire thing is spray paint, by the way. I don't know if you guys know that. Engine bay is like a 500-degree special engine bay spray paint. The fenders are all spray paint. The inside's all rhino lined. So we're just gonna shave up what we can, get some exposed metal, and get our grounds on. Alright, so the goal now is just to get the steering wheel up into place. I got the power steering fluid in, we got brake fluid in. We don't need that to start the car. I just want to make sure the car starts. But I do want the steering column to be up before we do anything. I've spent most of the time between 3 and 5 o'clock to try and look for these bolts. So this is what's going to hold this whole entire steering column up, welded to the actual frame of the dash. Well, the steering column is successfully in the 240, and now that we got everything buttoned up, tightened down, coolant hasn't really bubbled down much, obviously, because we haven't turned the car on, but I think that is our next step, is turning this car on. I'm terrified. First, I want to say sorry for how dark it is, but this is going to be our first ever start to the 240. I'm nervous. I'm not sure what it's going to sound like. I'm not even sure if it's going to turn on, so this might be for nothing, but here we go. Alright, so we spent a good amount of time with the 240 last night, and mostly some people on Instagram. Thank you again, David Farva. He really did help me out with this whole entire process of trying to figure out how to get the 240 started, and I think, again, I know why this maybe didn't start, and again, it's another wiring issue. Like I said, I'm not familiar with these wiring harnesses, so I'm learning as I go, so bear with me. You guys are learning too. So obviously this 240 is a manual. Manuals have clutches. This particular chassis has a clutch relay. Now, most chassis need to register that the clutch is pushed down in order for the car to be able to turn on, or else it could turn on in any gear, and that's really not that good. It's not safe. So I'm going to show you some of the few factors that may be the reason on why your 240 or S13 doesn't start. And this kind of goes for Z's and Z's alike and S chassis, kind of all of them. These Nissans in particular, does this door handle work? It does. Have what's called a clutch switch. You see that little spark plug looking thing right there? Well, this is a clutch switch, and when you go ahead and push down on the clutch pedal, as you see, I got a little 10mm bolt and nut to compress this little clutch switch right here. Now, if over time this pedal decides to warp, you could always just go down there and press the button for the car to actually start. Now, even if the button doesn't work, you still will be able to switch gears, obviously, because obviously the clutch and the clutch pedal is ran off the clutch sleeve, and that's all hydraulic pressure and stuff. Has nothing to do with the button. Has nothing to do with the button. The button just helps the car start safely. Now, there's another button exactly like it on the other side of this plug. And on the other side of the button that we just pressed, there's a plug just like this. So if neither of these plugs are plugged into the buttons, then there's no way for the car to tell that you're pushing down the clutch for it to start, and it won't start. The next option is your clutch relay switch. It's actually going to be this unplugged wire right here. Now, there's a mess of unplugged wires, and we're plugging them up as we go on, including this one. But a lot of them are like headlight switches and stuff like that, windshield wiper switches that we're not too worried about. We just want to get the car to start. We could bleed coolant, get fluid pumping through there, and make sure that the engine and everything moves and is healthy. Now this particular switch right here has a black wire with a white stripe and a black wire with a yellow stripe. This is going to be our clutch relay switch, and because we don't have a relay for it, and it's not like you could just go to AutoZone and pick up any relay you want for this kind of car, we're actually going to jump these two terminals, and hopefully we can start our car. All right, so this should be all we need to jumpstart the 240 essentially. Get one terminal in there, get the other terminal in there. All right. Hopefully you guys can see, but we've created the perfect loop with this wire. Damn it! Alright, so, listen, when I tell you I've tried absolutely everything I could, I'm completely honest with that. We've jumped multiple wires, we've bypassed a bunch of stuff, we've put 3 different batteries on this thing, we've tested continuity between the battery, alternator, the starter, the ignition switch, the clutch relay, we've tested the voltages between the alternator, the battery, the starter, the clutch relay, we've checked to see if everything was plugged in from the clutch pedal, we've pressed all the buttons, we've tested for power, we've done literally everything we could other than jump the starter. So after we tested continuity is just basically power, a complete circuit of power. We tested continuity between the alternator and the battery. We're obviously getting power. We tested power between the starter and the battery. We're getting power to the starter, okay? We tested power from the ignition switch, which is this yellow and black wire here. White and red wire runs to the alternator. We could tell the ignition switch is getting power. When we take our multimeter, we touch these two together, that makes continuity. When we go ahead to touch our plug, sorry if you guys can't see well. As you see, I'm not touching the red wire, I'm touching the other terminal. Now, obviously we're getting power to the starter, but it doesn't mean that the starter's good. And it also could mean that something's wrong with a plug within the electrical harness. Now, I know you guys can't see well, but you can see the multimeter, and that's all that matters. And you can see my hand, so satisfaction. How we're gonna tell for continuity in this is we're gonna go ahead and hook up this ground to the previous plug that we bypassed earlier. Try and pull it up for you, but I don't think I can. But we're gonna plug our positive wire into the lower part of the engine harness. It's actually like a secondary harness. And we're gonna be able to test the wire that's coming from the actual clutch relay, because that actually connects to the starter. And if that gets continuity from the clutch relay to the starter, then we know that the lower harness is okay, and most likely the culprit is the starter. I don't think I'll be able to pull this up for you guys. I'm not going to try it, but you guys will hear a beep. Yep. There we go. So that lets me know that there is power from, and I'll try the other terminal. Right. Yep. Yep. So if there's continuity going between that plug and that plug, then that tells me that everything in between those plugs, the engine harness and all, is completely okay, which is a good sign because I didn't feel like splicing. But bad news, we gotta replace the starter and those cost money. So I guess that's next. Damn.